Hello, welcome to Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Joe.
And I'm Allison.
And this is a podcast where we talk about movies, TV, and other miscellaneous topics through a queer lens.
That's right. And we do this because we are long lost neighbors, tragically torn apart when I had to move back in 2006, reunited as roommates who didn't know the other person was queer, but always loved movies. And here we are.
Sitting 4 feet apart from each other on a giant couch.
Smiling at each other.
And today we'll be talking about the movie Longlegs.
Before we get into that, I have to tell you something.
What?
Today's a very important day. Do you know what day it is?
Is today the day you moved to LA?
No, that was in June. This is July, folks.
Today's the day.
It's an anniversary.
Of the time we
movie.
went and saw Nope.
1 year ago today, Barbie came out.
Oh my God.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, July 21st, 2023. 1 year ago today, Barbie came out. And you know what Barbie featured? A Barbie president who was a woman.
And we just found out today that Joe Biden dropped the race and we will be having...
Probably.
At least running for president.
Well, depends on the convention, but yeah, most likely.
Whoa.
So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. And I feel like last year, that was such an event, the Barbenheimer phenomena.
It was.
And I don't know, I felt like Longlegs had that same vibe to it a little bit. Big popcorn, got to go to the movie theater type. Not quite the same level. Longlegs.
Oh.
Not the same level. People were definitely talking about it.
They were.
Drumming up excitement.
They did.
And I'm going to give you guys a quick summary in case you haven't heard about the Longlegs.
Yeah, go for it.
What a great title. Okay, Longlegs is a movie centering on FBI agent Lee Harker, assigned to an unsolved serial killer case that takes an unexpected turn, revealing evidence of the occult. Harker discovers a personal connection to the killer and must stop him before he strikes again. And this was a movie distributed by Neon, directed by Osgood Perkins, and produced by Nick Cage, starring Nicolas Cage.
Well, and Maika Monroe.
And Maika Monroe.
It's starring Maika Monroe featuring Nicolas Cage, in my opinion.
Maika Monroe, I was very struck by her throughout the movie, but it didn't really sink in that she was a kind of a scream queen until after. But we'll get to that, I guess.
Oh, we will. Did you know that Osgood Perkins, his dad is Anthony Perkins?
I did know that. Because you told me.
The actor from Psycho.
Yeah, we've got a lot to say.
Was a closeted gay man.
You're jumping ahead to the is it queer section.
Oh.
We're trying something new.
Oh, coffee's done. Did you also know that his mother, Barry Berenson, died in the 9/11 plane crash?
Yeah, that's very tragic.
Really tragic. And he was on the Big Picture podcast. And he just seems so level-headed. He's also in Legally Blonde.
Yeah, I love that part. Love that movie.
I love it.
We're going to delve into all of his history because I think it gives a lot of important context to the movie. And I don't know about you. I mean, we should just jump into it.
Blast into it.
Did we like it? Did we not? I feel like I had kind of a negative reaction to this movie. But then reading about maybe the authorial intention behind it and kind of thinking about it in context of his personal history, I was like, you know what? I actually kind of like it more than I thought. And I think it was an example of having certain expectations going into a movie, probably based on marketing, being disappointed by what I was then received in turn, kind of feeling let down by that.
I want to read what I sent to a friend when they asked me about the movie, because I feel like it captures how I felt. And I feel like I'm not alone in my opinion. The opening of the movie and the title sequence were incredible. Then the next 20 minutes, I thought it was still good. Then somewhere near the third act, I was like, is this movie not good? And then as the movie ended, Alice and I both saw it at the movie theater. Someone in the audience was like, what the hell was that?
And I think part of the reason is because, spoiler alert, it ends in a very campy way where it cuts back to Nick Cage, who plays the serial killer, and he has a very extensive makeup and he looks funny.
Yeah.
And he winks at the camera as a rock song plays, even though the character has already died in the film. So it's a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone on Reddit said it was a comment thread on the movie, and they were like, I think the wink of the camera was supposed to be hey, wasn't this a fun, crazy ride?
Yeah.
So I like that sentiment, but I just was
I just didn't expect it to be like that.
We'll dive into it, but you and I both walked in thinking it was going to be a Silence of the Lambs,
yes.
Modern retelling. So I was really hoping for it to be based in realism. And this movie just goes off into
Satan land.
Hail
Satan.
And
I don't want to say that on the podcast. I take it back.
Allison.
I hate Satan. Don't hurt me, Satan. I've never said the word Satan so many times in my life.
Satan, no. Back. Satan, sit. Get out of here, Satan.
I feel like someone does have a dog named Satan. I'm not going to lie. I don't know who they are, but they're out there.
Just someone in the world.
We need to pause so you can get the coffee.
No, let's keep going and say what we think other people's dogs' names are also.
Riveting stuff on the Queer Cinema Catchup.
Also, so we haven't recorded in like a month.
No, we recorded
Summer
in
line.
Chicago. And then we recorded when we got back.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, I do feel like we're trying to be more responsible and have little blueprints
And be a
of where
little
we're going.
structured,
And it's kind of making me really anxious because I'm like,
The
blueprint.
This
We
is-
got all the blueprint. So you might notice a little bit difference.
This could be either really good or really bad. I haven't really decided. We'll see how it goes. Guys, you're on for a wild ride. Mostly in how we're going to do this podcast today, and also because Longlegs itself is a wild ride. Well, but maybe not as wild as I would have hoped.
I feel like it was wild. So like kind of what you were just saying, like
Is this on the structure to talk about how much of a wild ride Longlegs is?
wild.
Section 2.
Control F, wild ride.
You're like rewriting the structure as we're talking out loud.
Could you imagine if we did have a camera and you were capturing all these ridiculous like acting?
Also, yeah, we had a networking meeting today.
We did, and it was really exciting. And
it was really exciting.
Lovely.
And hopefully we'll have some guests on the podcast.
I like how you're offering this up before we've...
Yeah. I'm pulling an Allison. Promising things that we haven't guaranteed yet. No, actually change it. We will definitely be having guests on this podcast.
Well, 100%.
But no,
eventually we will have guests.
Eventually,
yes.
Yeah.
We just can't say when.
First, we have to get this structure down.
I can't focus on. I like half like we need full structure. I'm half like I need to get my coffee. We were expecting Longlegs to be really scary because of the marketing, which I do want to talk about the marketing. But first, I'm curious, like you kind of were saying that there was a point in time where you were like, is this bad? And so it made me wonder, like, did you have like a moment that stands out as the scariest or like the highlight of the movie? And then what was like the least scary moment, the moment that disenchanted you?
That's a great and surprising question. Even though I could read it on the sheet. So you're going to ask this.
Quiet. And are my answers written there? Maybe.
I didn't see that. I won't look.
Don't read them.
Wow, you should write spoilers on this sheet. Allison did this really wonderful job of like taking the time to kind of write out a script for us on Google Docs. We both have it pulled up.
Yes.
This is our first time doing it. All right. Anyway. The scariest moment for me, quite honestly, the beginning of the movie where there was a jump scare of Nicolas Cage's character, Longlegs.
Oh, yeah.
Popping up on screen, and I jumped, and my friend looked over and laughed at me.
Well, you know what was so scary about this? It's a very opening scene. Excellent opening scene.
Excellent.
It's this little girl. She's in her bedroom, and she hears a car pull up. The house is deserted. It feels like it's the 70s, you know, like just kind of freaky vibes all around.
White snow. It's really bright.
Yeah. Kind of Fargo-y in that way. And she goes outside in this like Stranger Things kid jacket. And then she like, sees a car in the distance. And it's kind of actually important plot wise because there's like a figure in the car, but it's not a person, which we'll get into later. But then all of a sudden, Nicolas Cage's character, just his like bottom half of his torso appears in the frame. And everyone in the theater like jumped. And then the most disturbing thing happened. He's like speaking in this very odd voice. He's like, it's the almost birthday girl, and like talking to her, and the girl just kind of looking at him like confused, like it's clear she doesn't know this man. And then all of a sudden he says something like, but hey, like I need to take off my long legs. And then he crouches down, and then it cuts away before you can see his face, and it sent like a super shiver down my spine. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, such a good editing moment.
He wasn't even cut off at the waist. You could see his mouth.
Oh,
I'm getting like chills just thinking about it. Just like how off everything is. Like, you know something's wrong, but you can't put your finger on what it is. It's like, this is a horror movie, but it's like in the day, it's bright white. But then also at the same time, when it's freshly snowing, everything becomes oddly silent. So it's just like very quiet. And all you can hear is the crunching of the girl's feet as she's...
Sorry,
there's someone outside of our window.
Who was crouching down? Mr. Longlegs?
Oh, Mr. Longlegs.
I don't want to upset him.
Yeah, it was very alarming. But also when the girl was walking outside, couldn't you hear like a cuckoo? Like,
yes,
wasn't some... Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And there was like a weird distant voice calling to her. What was that all about?
I think it was him.
Yeah, because that was really unsettling because you could see somebody in the car, but then you could hear another voice that clearly wasn't coming from the car. So it was just very like, what am I supposed to be afraid of? What am I supposed to be like anticipating?
Yeah, so I think she's like looking at the car, and then that's where the jump scare happens. It's like Longlegs is there, and it's like framed where his head's cut off. Like you can only see like up to his lips. Also, his gender's questionable, ambiguous.
Except you know it's Nicolas Cage. But two ideas about this. Like movies that either there's an interesting title and they don't reveal it until the end. And my favorite example of that is Lion. It's about a boy in India who gets separated from his family for years and years and gets adopted by an Australian family.
Longlegs, Lion, really similar movies. We'll start with L.
At the end, there's like a tile that reveals that he had been mispronouncing his name his whole life. And then the very last line was that his name means lion. And that's when you figure out why it's called that. And I loved that. And then in this movie, conversely, you're like, what a weird title. And you find out right away why it's called that, because he says it to his victims, like, I gotta take off my long legs. Oh, it's just so disturbing.
And then so the beginning of the movie, you come to find out it's like a flashback in the 70s, but the aspect ratio is like that square aspect ratio. And then there was like this really cool, like disturbing credit sequence.
Yeah.
It's like bright red and the screen opens up to widescreen.
That was cool.
And is it playing like 70s glam rock music?
I think so.
That opening scene, including the title sequence, was just really well done and just immediately set the tone, set the mood, and the atmosphere was just all there.
And I would argue that then it goes into my next favorite, scariest parts, which is just the opening sequence, which is like you get introduced to this female FBI agent in a room full of other FBI agents. They're like the young newbies. And they're like, okay, you have to go canvass the different neighborhoods because there's like some serial killer holed up in one of these homes, but you're unlikely to find him. Like, it's kind of like, oh, you guys are like young, just go out and do this. And then they're in this like creepy neighborhood. Honestly, I was getting Pennsylvania vibes, which was really weird because what
made it creepy though,
Seattle.
Like there's not anything wrong with these places. Like it's just a neighborhood with houses, but everything is just so quiet and empty. And it seems like nobody's there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You're just kind of like in suburbia hell in a way.
Yes. The thing about this that I actually really liked, but it should have been a signal to me that I wasn't going to like it in the end. The girl's like, I think it's that house, to her like partner.
That's like another shocking parts of the movie is they're canvassing the houses. What were they trying to do? He
likes neighborhoods like this, the serial killer who is not the Nicolas Cage character, which was making me feel like Silence of the Lambs, where there are multiple serial killers involved in that movie. I was like, oh,
Did you know at the beginning that there were multiple?
I wasn't sure, but I was like, well, it's surprising to me that we're going to be potentially seeing the Nicolas Cage killer in the very first non-teaser scene. So I'm assuming this is somebody else.
Oh.
Because like in Silence of the Lambs, he's helping her track somebody else. So I just kind of thought...
Who? Anthony Hopkins
is Hannibal Lecter is helping Clarice track Buffalo Bill.
And then in this movie, who is who?
Lee Harper, played by Maika Monroe, in the very first scene that she appears in, is trying to track an unknown serial killer in a neighborhood. In my mind, I was like, I don't think this is going to be Longlegs.
You think it's going to be the Anthony Hopkins character?
No, I just thought there was going to be maybe like they're going to catch this killer, or this killer is going to signal there's another scarier killer on the loose, or it is Nicolas Cage and he's going to escape. Like, I just didn't think that she would succeed in this first scene.
Okay.
Because it was like really pushing you into, which I really liked, like a high action scene right from the start.
Yeah, I don't think I walked in thinking it was going to be like Silence of the Lambs, but this first scene after the credits sequence, it's set in the 90s. The way they're dressed, the way they're acting, Maika Monroe's the main character. I immediately think of Silence of the Lambs. They go to this neighborhood. I honestly didn't really know what they were doing, but I knew they were like
searching for a bad guy.
Also very similar to Silence of the Lambs. So I was making these comparisons. And then they're just like in the middle of the road looking around, and Maika just like turns and looks. Mm-hmm. And I just remember they had a shot of like the roof of the house.
It was like an attic room.
And Maika's like, this is the house. And her partner's like, what? How do you know? We can't just like jump in. This is our first assignment. We can't just like do something on intuition. We've built up no status to be able to do this.
She wants to call it in.
She wants to call it in. And then he's like, let me go up to the door and like check. Knocks on the door. The door opens. He immediately gets shot and killed. And then what I really liked is Maika immediately runs into the house. Mm-hmm. And so I'm drawing parallels to when Clarice in Silence of the Lambs is the one that discovers where Buffalo Bill lives. And so I was really excited.
It's the beginning.
I was really excited for this because I was like, oh, is this going to be like a Silence of the Lambs thing, but kind of take off? I honestly thought that was Nicolas Cage. I thought they were going to capture him, and then it was going to be like a study of trying to figure out like how he was involved in all of this. I don't know. I thought it was going to like go that route.
It's kind of like Silence of the Lambs in that in the beginning, Hannibal Lecter is locked up.
Right. So I was thinking it was going to be like a similar element to that, but it's like, no, it's like this other person, unrelated. I mean, we don't know how they're related, but it's not Nicolas Cage's character.
Yeah, basically because she does this successfully, she gets brought on to the Longlegs case, which is like a stumper for the FBI. And one interesting thing I read actually, and like doing some research for this, is that Osgood, or is it Osgood?
I think it's Osgood.
And
he also goes by Oz.
He goes by Oz. Okay, so Osgood Perkins, the director and writer. I'll read the quote actually. We're going to get into this a little bit later, but he was asked like if this is real, like based on any real case. And he says, I can't look at real things. I don't like them. They don't sit well with me. I don't want to know. All this stuff couldn't be more fictionalized and totally made up. That's part of the fun of it for me. It's like, oh, that's how FBI people probably talk. Oh, that's how they would probably come into a room. I don't know, maybe it's something like this. It's part of what keeps it light for me. Honestly, I'm not interested in what these sickos do. To me, this is a different kind of poem, you know, and it's totally just make-believe. Which I thought was really interesting because I feel like, you know, so much of the stuff we watch, they're like trying to get everything really accurate. And this was like, no, I don't really want to think about that. This is like a metaphor, and which I think is really true if you like look at the movie as a whole. Anyway, side note. But the psychic thing I really liked, but I think it was a little clue this movie was not going to be so grounded, and I should have seen that as a little
early on,
a little tip.
Because immediately after she finds the right house, they capture this killer. Then she's alone in a room doing like some sort of test over projectors where they're showing like colors and she's responding.
I think they were testing her intuition or like her ability to get things right.
Which I don't think that's a real
I don't
thing.
think so. I mean, at first I was like, is it like psychological testing to see if she'll like break?
No, like psychic testing.
I was like, oh, it's for psychics.
I just remember watching like kind of like a behind the scenes clip about the movie Basic Instinct, the scene where Sharon Stone's being interrogated.
Yeah.
Like it's a very like cinematic scene. And I just remember the lighting department. He was interviewed. He's like, you think that an interrogation room looks like this? No, it's like strictly for cinematic purposes. Like the lighting is all very dramatic to like achieve this. It's like not based in reality. So I kind of pulled that from this scene. And I guess that's kind of Osgood's motivation. Oh my gosh, my water bottle just fell.
P.S. about that Sharon Stone scene. Did you hear about this recently? She recreated it with the underwear.
Oh.
Or like she reclaimed it.
I love Sharon.
I feel like it'd probably freak you out because I feel like when hearing what you say about practical magic too, and now you're like, I just can't see it. Those ladies were in their prime. I feel like you're gonna look at the picture.
Oh, Sharon Stone I think looks great.
Okay, well, here, I'll show you a picture.
Why are you going to Pornhub.com?
Don't say that. I would never. Oh, here it is.
Is this on the Google Doc that we're supposed to look up a picture of Sharon Stone right now?
So yeah, otherwise I think my only other scary moment that I think really stood out to me were two things. One, should we like summarize the reveals quickly so I can explain this, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, reveal.
Okay, so what you need to know.
Spoiler alert.
What ends up happening in this movie is Lee, the Maika Monroe character.
Were you about to say Lee Harvey Oswald?
her name's like Lee Harker or something. So I was about to say Har. But I couldn't tell if it was Harper or Harker, so I gave up.
Speaking of Lee Harvey Oswald and assassinations.
Oh, God. Yes, we almost had one in our nation.
And now we have another woman running for president. Like, what the fuck is like? So that's great.
So much has happened.
It's just like so much like history is always being made.
I know.
So much U.S. history is being made.
I know.
But sorry, continue.
Lee gets pulled onto this case where there's this serial killer that's been operating, I think, for like 30 some years. And what ends up happening is the father of many families with a daughter whose birthday was what date? February 14th? Yeah. April 14th?
But it didn't need to be on, like, no. The date mattered of the day.
The girl.
So it always had to be on a 14th, but it didn't matter what month.
That's actually not right. It was that the girl was born on the 14th, but the murder would happen never on the 14th, but around that date. But the girl's birthday would always be the same.
These girls that were being murdered would always, their birthday would be on the 14th.
Yeah, what ends up happening is the father of this family ends up killing the daughter and the other members of his family and himself. It's happened multiple times through the years, and they find these strange letters in the home from someone named Longlegs, but they can find no evidence that the home was broken into. There's no DNA evidence, nothing. And so they're like, what is happening? How is this like strange Longlegs convincing these fathers to kill their families and themselves?
What's the connection?
And so she's brought in to help with this. She becomes kind of obsessed. It becomes very clear over the course of the movie that she may have some connection to Longlegs. Maybe her own family experienced this. She has like a mother who's very religious, who keeps telling her to say her prayers. Her birthday is coming up. It's the 14th. Her birthday's on the 14th, everybody. Okay. And then meanwhile, Longlegs, we start to learn more about him. He lives in a creepy basement. He makes dolls. Lo and behold, Lee and her partner, they find an old barn. I kind of forget like why the barn was important. Oh, it was the site of the one time that this like murder didn't happen, but there was some weird event where one girl escaped, I guess.
I did not.
Kiernan Shipka.
Wow.
But we can leave that aside. But they go to the barn thinking they found like Longlegs headquarters. They're going to find some evidence there or something. And they end up finding like a creepy doll in the, like, what is that called when it's like up in the attic with like the hay of a barn?
The loft floor.
The loft floor. Okay, so they like unearth this creepy doll and they give it an autopsy basically. It has like a weird lead ball in its head. And the day that they find that, this girl that escaped this killing suddenly comes to. She's been in a mental institute, kind of in a fugue state for years. So they go to visit her. It's Kiernan Shipka, who has been in another Oz Perkins movie called The Black Coat's Daughter. They talk to her, and apparently Longlegs had visited her the other day, and she's being really weird and creepy and threatening. And so blah, blah, blah. Long story short, alert. We find out that Longlegs has an accomplice. It is Maika Monroe's mother, who
played by Alicia Witt.
Alicia Witt, who intervened when Longlegs showed up on her own property to harm her daughter, begged him not to do so, and he said, fine, but you have to help me. So then in a strange, thing that doesn't quite make sense to me, she starts dressing up like a nun to bring the doll.
Looking even more scary than just she just dressed in regular clothing.
Like, I would not let that woman to my house.
She was like, I would wear it because everyone trusts a nun. It's like, you look like you're straight out of a horror movie, ma'am.
Terrifying. And she would show up with the doll that Longlegs had created to present to the family and kind of make them seem safe, but then she would have to stay there until the dad went crazy and murdered everybody. And I guess the twist is that Longlegs is a devil worshiper, and so the devil is real, and that's how they're possessing the doll, they're possessing the daughters, they're possessing the fathers, and people are getting murdered. And Maika Monroe had forgotten that this was part of her past, and she remembered, so it kind of ends with a big sequence where she has to get to her mother before her mother gets to her partner's family and kills the daughter, or enacts the same horrible thing to this family, and she doesn't succeed, right?
Yeah.
And what happens to her mom?
She shoots her in the head.
Okay, but the daughter is saved.
She commits matricide.
Whew, that was hard. That was more challenging than I thought. But yeah, it just kind of was like got to a place of being like demonic possession, but like in a way that I have like a lot of questions.
Yeah, that was my problem. They did a huge exposition dump with the mom at the end of the movies explaining all of this, and it just was like not craftily told. So then I'm immediately thinking of like logic. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're going a more cerebral route, like you shouldn't give me this exposition dump because you're like telling me to like look at this like the logistics of it. The logistics don't make any goddamn sense.
I'm like, I don't really know why she needed to be there. Like, why couldn't he just drop the doll off?
And also
like,
made me question like Satan himself. Like I know like Satan's
we're
doing
courting evil in this podcast.
Satan's doing bad stuff, just do bad stuff. But it's like Satan needs to create a pentagram to do something, to release something and do something, and
just for evil to exist.
Just for evil to exist. It's just like,
when I was watching, I'm like, what is the metaphor of this? It doesn't feel like there's really a point, which now I will say when we kind of get into the background of Osgood Perkins, I think that there is a metaphor there, but just was lost on me.
We actually had a friend, he was like, the movie's really interesting, and kind of the theme of it is parents, how far will they go to protect their children?
Yes.
And so this mom, so her daughter doesn't get sent to hell, she goes around like murdering the whole town, or like getting the whole town possessed so their families die instead.
Yeah.
But it's just like so outlandish.
It is.
And silly, and I don't know. And Alicia Witt, like you asked me like what was the most scariest part of the movie and what's like the least scariest part of the movie. And there was something in her performance when she would do phone calls with Maika Monroe that just felt a little like bizarre, but like not in the way that I think that they intended. I was like, I started questioning the dialogue. All the phone calls that happened before, I'm like, and yeah, like you find out that the mom's like much more heavily involved than normal, but she's like, what are you working on, honey? And
she's
like,
seems so sweet.
But don't you know that your daughter's like working for the FBI? Like what? Like of course she's working on like murder cases. Like what?
My brother said something interesting.
Did you see this movie?
Yeah, he did. And it was kind of similar to what you always says. He said it felt like a little too small, like of a film, like in the sense that for this like demonic possession story to really work, especially because it's like trying to recall the satanic panic stuff of the 90s, but it feels so like localized in this like small place with a very few small cast of characters. And the fact that Maika Monroe is connected to it but doesn't remember, which I think speaks to sort of like how we process trauma, but the fact that that's happening and then it's revealed that she's like intimately connected, it sort of makes it even smaller in a way. And so it feels like what's a snake that eats its tail? An Ouroboros?
Oh, I didn't know how to name.
Ouroboros? I can't pronounce it.
We're saying a lot of evil things on this podcast.
Is it Halloween?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's even like having Satan. Satan is in this movie. It's like, why you choose like a demonic figure who's like literally not the end all be all of evil? Yes, the movie's like way too small and localized, but then you're choosing like this massive figure to be involved in this town. It's like, why is he focused on this town?
Wait, that's such a good point.
And maybe this is happening like all over the country, we don't know, but you're like made a small little indie movie and Marvel characters start showing up. It's like, why are they
Wait, that is so interesting, because I feel like so many possession movies are like focused, like, okay, The Exorcist or whatever of Emily Rose, all those sort of things. It's like about a family and it's very specific. And you don't really think about how like, why is the devil targeting this little family? But here, because they do try and make it a bigger case, it almost like hangs a hat on that in a way you're like, wait a second.
Like literally,
why is he obsessed
Satan
with
is
the Seattle Pacific Northwest area
town? Because even in The Exorcist, it's not literally Satan. It's just like a evil angel from hell, not the main demon.
But and then even like the witch, I feel like that works because in the witch, this family is maybe warding off the devil and maybe trying to tempt Anya Taylor-Joy into becoming a witch or whatever. But what I think it like works about that is like, because it's so insular and they don't try and make it seem bigger than it is, you can be like, is this really happening, or is this family going crazy because they're so isolated?
Yes.
Versus this movie where it was like, nobody's going crazy.
Nobody's going crazy. And
we're going to pretend this is really, really real.
Yes.
And I would have preferred it to like live on the edge.
Yes. Like in the more cerebral route. Like I feel like what did a good job of that is Infinity Pool.
Yeah.
Like you didn't really know what was reality, what wasn't reality. I just wish they could have like merged these two together, because again, the atmosphere and mood and tone of this was so strong throughout the entire movie, even when it just got like wild.
A couple parts, which I'll talk, which will be my least favorite parts. But
do you have a specific? So my like least scary part, honestly, was like the phone calls with the mom, because in the beginning it just kind of hinted that I started to question, not trust the filmmaking at that point.
I don't know why those didn't bother me. I was kind of like, it's fine. But there are like little moments like that where the first like scene, I was kind of bought in, but I also had questions. It's like when the first day she's learned about this new case, she's in her very disturbing home that has no curtains and
she's
looks
in the
terrifying.
Middle of the woods.
In a glass box.
In a glass box wooden cabin.
And I'm like, what the hell, lady? And they already had that really great scene where the daughter of her partner is like, is it scary being a lady FBI agent? And she's like, yes.
Yeah.
So you're already like aware that she's afraid of her job and we're afraid for her. And then she gets like the Longlegs would send birthday cards to his victims. So she gets a birthday card from Longlegs.
Blair Underwood's daughter?
No. Maika Monroe on that. Oh. And then like, remember she like sees somebody outside. She goes outside and then someone sneaks into her house.
Yeah. Wait, so let's describe that scene.
Isn't that what I'm doing?
Well, you kind of told the
fast.
punchline.
You really don't like when I do that.
Because it's the setup. You draw people in.
But see,
the mystery. The mystery, and then you do the punchline. You don't do punchline, and then here's all the boring details around
I'm like doing it because I've tried to describe that concisely so I can get to the point.
Oh, but I think it's a really strong scene.
Okay, well, go ahead. You can start.
I want to linger in it.
But then that's not my least favorite scene. I have to come back to that. But
really quick, say your least favorite scene.
Well, no, because I feel like, okay, quickly, the scene we're going to describe, that hinted to me that something was a little bit off, because it was kind of like odd.
Off, meaning that you weren't going to enjoy this movie, or off because this movie is off in general, but works in its favor a lot of times.
In the sense that like it was scary because it was like somebody's in her house, but it was also kind of like, wait a second, why is she doing these things? Like, why isn't she?
Yeah.
She's an FBI agent. Why is she calling it in? Like, what's happening?
We talk about this in editing. It's like if you unintentionally make the character make a stupid decision, then you start to question things.
Yeah. So,
and it's a stupid decision that she makes that doesn't make sense.
So like the seed was born in that moment, but then the part where it really lost me. So Longlegs, they do an excellent job of hiding him from view and giving you little glimpses and making him what you don't see so much scarier, because you know that he's like out there about to crouch down and take off his long legs and terrify you. So you're really on edge about seeing Nicolas Cage for the first time.
Yeah.
And then they finally show him in full when he goes into a convenience store to get, what did he even buy? I don't even know. Candy? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Fun fact, in that scene.
Is his daughter.
Yes! Osgood Perkins' daughter plays the clerk.
I feel like we're having a weird, creepy, like, intuition today, where we're both like reading each other's minds, where we're each trying to like tell each other like surprising facts, and then we're like, oh, we already know that.
I know.
It's like, did I read it or did you read it? No, I read your mind.
We love the psychicness. Okay, so that part I was like, all right. I kind of liked the way his daughter was being really like not afraid of him, and then she shouts like, Dad, that gross man's here again, and like all of that. I was like, all right. I kind of like seeing the bad guy in this sort of like sad sack kind of way, where he's just like kind of gross and weird and unusual, because he like tries to be cutesy with her like he was with the little girl in the beginning.
But she's in her late teens, so she's like not falling for this.
Whatever. And she's not afraid of him, which was refreshing to me. But then he gets in the car and you finally see his full face, and he's like
from a profile shot, and
he's driving and he starts like mimicking her, like like screaming, and then I think he starts singing.
Yeah, I think rock music was playing in the background.
I was like, this is dumb.
It was a little dumb. And what he was doing what I thought that he was trying to do is he was, at first, you think he's mimicking her, like calling for her dad.
Yeah.
But then I thought he was like mimicking the girls that he murdered in the past.
I think that it did segue to that.
Begging for their like parents, like,
help, yes, help.
Dad. That's what he's doing. He's like, Dad,
yeah,
help. And he's like doing that. It's just like really like off-putting, but like in a I was like I'm very aware of the actor right now doing this, sitting in the car. I just felt very like exposed, and it
like lifted the veil off of Longlegs, and I was like, put it back on. Put it back on. I'm not scared anymore.
Oh, but we have to finish the scene I want to describe. We see Maika and Monroe go home. This is before the reveal of seeing Longlegs' face and all that stuff. And she's in this isolated cabin in the woods, but the cabin has like massive glass windows. Could not be more isolated from the already isolating small town. Mm-hmm. She's in the house. She's having a phone call with her mom. She's sitting at a desk. And another great feature about this movie, I guess we've already mentioned it, but great placement of the camera. You can see Maika Monroe sitting at her desk. Her back is to this kitchen space, but she's framed in the shot in which a lot of the kitchen that's slightly out of focus fills a lot of the screen, and Maika Monroe only takes up like a quarter of the screen. So my eyes the entire time were looking in that kitchen waiting for something to appear.
Like I was so on edge. That's why I feel like the scene didn't totally lose me, because I was like scared.
I was scared. Yeah. I could be getting the order of it wrong, but I think we like hear something, and then Maika like looks over her shoulder into the kitchen, and she starts to become aware that she's like really uncomfortable, and I think she tells her mom that she has to call her back, and then she like looks outside. Her desk faces out the window, and we see a figure in the distance, but you can't really tell if it's a figure or like
do you think it was
a bush.
Do you think it was a doll?
Oh,
I think it was actually.
So creeped out. Also, we're filming this in the afternoon, thank God, because I probably would get creeped out.
It was a doll, because remember it looked really weird. It was
very still. I thought it was just Longlegs.
No, I think it's the
out
doll.
there.
I think it was the doll.
And then Maika immediately like goes outside, and it's like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you going outside? Like, not like locking the doors behind. Did she even leave the door open?
The door open.
And then she like goes out to where the figure that she saw was. And then she like looks back, and now there's a figure walking in her house.
Yeah. And it was the devil.
Are you sure? I thought it was Longlegs.
I don't know. It was really big.
Because I thought we saw the wavy hair. At one point, we do see the devil in the house. It's just like, it's like a flash frame.
Oh. Well, okay. Open to interpret. I don't know. I don't really. I'm not going to watch again.
You left your house abandoned, so now you have to worry about a killer being inside your house. Like, that kind of felt really foolish to me.
Yeah.
She goes inside the house, and there's a letter on the desk. And the letter, she opens it, it's a birthday card.
And she does put on like evidence gloves and stuff, but I was kind of like, this is evidence. What's going on?
Are you doing? Yeah.
Call the police. What are you doing? This is your investigation.
And the note said something along the lines of like, if you reveal that I was here, then I will kill your mom.
But it was, okay, this is also hilarious. It was written in code. He had a special code. Oh. No one had ever broken the code. And then she reaches onto her desk, and there's a Bible, and she connects it to Bible verses, and suddenly she's able to decode every single letter. And her colleague is like shocked. I'm like, the Bible's a pretty typical cipher for codes, I'm pretty sure. That's what I could kind of tell when I read the quote about him not looking at FBI procedure. I was like, yeah, I can tell. But so yeah, that there were some plot questions here where I was like, but I still bought into it, because I was like, well, maybe she's involved not as a victim who's forgotten, but as the accomplice. Or like, I thought maybe there was going to be more.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
I was like, okay, I'll let these slide, because maybe it's intentional, but it was intentional in a silly way.
Yeah, so that kind of describes that scene. It was really creepy.
Yeah. The other thing I will say that was really scary, but I wish they'd leaned into it more, was they kept talking about the man downstairs, which could be the devil, but also the other terrifying reveal that they did not make a big enough deal out of was that growing up, once Longlegs and Maika Monroe's mother decide to be these complicit murderers,
possessors,
satanic followers, he begins to live downstairs in their basement. Mm-hmm. So he's the literal man downstairs, which he has forgotten, which is so creepy.
It's so creepy, but they reveal it in like the most casual way, which I'm sure Oz has a reason for why he did it that way, but I feel like they really could have milked that more.
Yeah, and then there was just something very confusing when they start to show you that the mom somehow knows Longlegs. They give you little flashbacks that don't explain everything. But the first time she interacts with Longlegs, it was a scene with the little girls outside with Longlegs, and the mom comes up and is like, who are you? What are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm your friend. I'm a friend of a friend. You know, the man downstairs. So it makes it seem like it's the devil, but then he is the man downstairs.
But he wasn't in the man downstairs yet.
No. So I kind of felt like that kind of cheapened it too, even though I know. Anyway, The point is, so many of the plot details of this movie actually do kind of scare me if I take it away from the movie itself and I sit there and think about them. I'm like, oh.
which we'll talk about my reaction after the movie.
Yes, we will. But okay, let's segue
back to structure.
Back to the structure.
I wish you had written this in code and then you forced me to decode it like Maika Monroe's character, and you just put a Bible by my side.
That would have been really
and
fun.
It's just me and I record quietly for 5 hours trying to solve this.
I think you're overestimating my ability to create puzzles.
And you're overestimating how quickly I could solve this. Hey, I tried to take calculus back in high school. It did not end well.
So let's just kind of go back. We talked a little bit about this. I would like to touch a little bit on the marketing, because I think we do talk about this kind of often, where we'll like say whether or not the trailer or like the buzz around the movie drew us in. And I think for both of us, it really did, but we actually didn't look at any of the marketing, right? You didn't see anything.
When we saw Maxine, the trailer played.
Did it?
You were out getting your
chicken
fingers. And then Will also went out there to find you.
Which was really sweet.
And the trailer was playing, but I like actively did not look.
I'm glad I missed it. But all I heard, the only thing I saw was that it was like Silence of the Lambs. My expectation was like, this is going to be like Silence of the Lambs. But apparently one of the interesting marketing strategies of this movie, which apparently is very unusual. I have a quote here from Christina Ziza. Christina Ziza is the president of publicity at Neon, which distributed Longlegs. And she was quoted saying, "Very few filmmakers and producers with a Nicolas Cage in a film would agree to a campaign where you don't show him. They believe in us and took a huge leap of faith. That was the cornerstone of the campaign. Faradoff agrees." I think that's another publicity person at Neon. "Oz Perkins and the producers were incredible partners from day one." And so basically in a lot of the advertising, they put a black bar redacting his face. So you could see like images of Longlegs, but you couldn't see his face, which draws people in.
Okay. I never saw that marketing part of it.
I started seeing it like once I knew we were going to the movie on TikTok, but I would like scroll past it because I just really want to know spoilers.
I saw a really interesting ad on Reddit. So when a movie's being made, they have boom mics, which are the ones that are your classic like boom operator. He's holding this like microphone on a stick that's above the actors and like capturing them in the space. Then also usually actors, especially like the main speaking actors, they'll have a lav mic that's taped to their chest. And fun fact, a lot of audio ends up getting re-recorded in ADR sessions after a movie is made, but like on-set audio is best. And when you're wearing the lav mic, it's like right on your chest, right? Well, there's an ad that plays and words pop up, says like you're watching now the time when Maika Monroe first saw Nicolas Cage performing Longlegs. Mm-hmm. And what you're listening to is Maika Monroe's heart rate. And so you just hear like this like thudding noise.
That's awesome.
And it's the scene where Maika Monroe walks into the interrogation room.
Yeah, which was
and
scary.
Slowly her heart starts beating faster and faster. And it tells you on screen how fast her heart's beats per minute. And it's like really well done. And it's like super smart marketing, especially if you like are in entertainment and know like how like a lav mic is like taped to a person's
so you know
chest.
It's like they're not faking it.
Yeah, because there's been stuff I've edited in the past where I can hear like someone's heart. Like I don't know why, but I just like it captures their heart rate,
so
heartbeat,
cool.
and I can hear it really well. So I thought that was really smart marketing.
I agree. And I think it kind of speaks to like maybe why when they started to reveal more of Longlegs while the movie was falling apart a little bit for me. And I think like Osgood was kind of aware of this strategy, or like wanted to lean to the strategy of like keeping the villain a little bit ambiguous or hidden, because he was quoted saying, "Longlegs oozes the forbidden feeling of looking at a crime scene photo. Something sensationally awful you're not supposed to see but can't look away from anyway. I've had times in my life where you're in a bookstore, you're in the true crime section, and in the middle of these books, they've got these picture pages and you don't really want to see them," he said. "One of the worst things to look at is the redacted crime scene photographs, like the Manson crime scene photographs, these black blobs, the feeling of looking at these pictures in the movie." And he said, "The redaction is worse than the thing, which is the true nature of what I'm trying to do." So the idea is this movie is the redaction. And I think it was scariest when it leaned into that, and the marketing kind of got that. But then
they show everything.
I know. Then the reveal was the opposite. I feel like the marketing, I'm glad I saw it. I don't know. Like, I feel like being drawn into something like that and kind of having that excitement of like, this is going to be terrifying. Even if it's a letdown, like at least, I don't know. I still appreciate the effort.
Yeah, so do I. It's not a good movie, but I'm not disappointed with my movie-going experience.
No, agreed. Quickly, this was Cage's biggest opening weekend since National Treasure back in 2004. On top of that, it has delivered the best horror opening of the year to date and is part of a select group of only 17 $20 million plus opening weekends by non-major studios, including Lionsgate and Dimension, since 1995.
Whoa. Nicolas is always doing really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And the rumor is that he's like in so much debt that he has to sign on to all these projects. But I love that he just is doing all these
Maybe
weird
being hungry
movies.
is what it takes to take some risks.
Yeah.
All right. So
that covers the section titled What's Going On with Nicolas Cage.
well, actually, do you want to talk a little bit about the look of Longlegs and why wasn't it scary? We already talked a little bit about like undoing the veil and seeing like Nicolas Cage just be like a really campy actor kind of makes it more comical, and so took the fear out. But so Longlegs, we've kind of described, he has like very long gray hair, kind of like a lion's mane, I would say, and an upturned nose and like these high cheekbones that look like he's had plastic surgery and or has been like sculpting his face with clay, kind of like the dolls that he makes. And his lips look kind of altered too. And then his clothes are kind of like gender ambiguous, I would say, like almost like a grandma wearing like big sweaters, but they like half look masculine presenting, half look kind of feminine presenting, I suppose is how I would describe him, but definitely leading into like a gender ambiguous kind of presentation. And then his voice was really high pitched. And yeah, so what did you find?
So on the Big Picture podcast, Sean interviewed Oz Perkins. And what I found really interesting about it is Sean asked Oz about Nicolas Cage's performance specifically and what Oz was going for. So Oz kind of talks about how he can find ways to, you know, take your traditional look at a serial killer, like what you think that is, and try to put a spin on it. So Oz says, okay, killers always wear black. What if he wears all white? What if he gives himself up? Okay, well, that's the movie Seven. But we want to be referencing Seven because this is a Warhol pop art piece where we're referencing things that already existed and we're commenting on them in a loving way. So he gives himself up. All right, so when he presents himself, he's going to be pathetic, not strong. He's not the Jigsaw Killer or Jason. You can't kill. He's just a guy. He's just a gross guy. So when he goes into the hardware store and when the girl turns around and says, Dad, that gross guy's back, to me, that's the movie. The movie is like, he's just a dude who fell in with the wrong crowd, the devil. Like he was just riffing on his guitar one day and the devil starts coming through his headphones, through the amp, like, hey there, you know, that's how it happens. At least in my sort of fantasy land. So the idea was to say he's nothing special. He's just a gross dude, which yeah, at the end of the day, all serial killers are just gross dudes. Like they just are. There's nothing cool, interesting about them. They just get off. That's all they do. They're just trying to have an orgasm and they do it by killing people. Oof. It's fucking whack. And when you kind of put that forward, even in the context of a serial killer movie, where the serial killer of historically is interesting, powerful, it's Hannibal Lecter, it's John Doe, it's these kind of omniscient, unbeatable forces. What if he's a piece of shit?
I love this quote.
Which is what they really are. And yet there's something else going on though. Like I think there are some themes of the movie. One of the themes I think is so interesting is like what our parents do and don't show us, what they share with us and don't share with us, what they try to protect us from and don't protect us from. That's a big concept. But there's also a feeling, a force, something else going on in the movie that feels outside of that too.
That's a great quote. It actually makes me think that the scene where I started to go, this is dumb, that was intentional. That I was supposed to have that reaction to him being like, oh God, this guy, I'm supposed to be afraid of him. I think that was probably intentional on the part of the director, which it makes me personally like that moment more. Even though it turned me off of the movie. I felt the same way.
Yeah, not until I rereading this quote to you when I listened to it on the Big Picture, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of like his performance more. Like, it was the intention of it.
Yeah, it was to be like, ew, this guy sucks.
I think where it fails though in achieving that is I would make the devil not real.
I think it would have been cool if we're led to believe the devil is not real, kind of like the witch, and then the last 30 seconds reverse that again.
Yeah.
And show us that he is real.
Yeah. And again, it's just like too insular. It's like Maika Monroe works for the FBI. Her mother used to be a nurse and is now pretending to be a nun working with Longlegs, who's living downstairs. The mom is still praying and is really religious, but she's also having all these children be possessed and sacrificed to Satan. It's just like, I was like, what is going on? Maika Monroe's boss has a daughter that was also born on the 14th, who's the final girl. Like once
before the devil can take over.
Once she gets murdered, then it completes the pentagram, and then what the devil gets to just hang out. Like what's the goal of this guy? You know, he has the whole underworld. Like,
you know, it's kind of like in Stranger Things. What's the bad guy's name in Stranger Things? You know what I'm talking about?
Rat Boy?
Yeah, Jamie Campbell.
What was his quote on Twitter?
Okay, everyone's probably heard about Rat Boys, but
they're in.
Give
us some examples.
Well, there's Josh O'Connor. There's What's
the noise of a rat?
Jeremy Allen White, which we were watching The Bear, and I was like, I don't really see it. I don't think he's a Rat Boy. He he does kind of like a rat. What does he look like? He's like, oh my God, he looks like a fish. He looks like a fish. And he was getting so
really
excited.
excited.
And it was making me laugh. But anyway, I saw this hilarious tweet where J. Campbell Bower, you know, who was in Stranger Things, he was in Sweetie Todd when he was younger, he's been in many things. Some girl tweeted like, I'm really sad that Jamie Campbell Bower isn't around for this renaissance of the rat boy. Like, would have been perfect for it. And then he commented and was like, I'm still here, babe, or something like that.
Said,
it really was just very charming.
I'm still here, bitches. And he
Yeah.
has like a picture of him from Stranger Things.
But yeah, okay, but I will say, like, it is very insular, and I think that took me out of the movie, but I also think the themes that they're exploring, it's like, especially when it's focused on this like parent-child dynamic and what's not said and how that can be harmful.
We also haven't said that when you're possessed,
You forget.
Maika Monroe's, with her, she was supposed to be murdered, but because her mom is working with Longlegs, it's keeping Maika Monroe alive. And basically the way that they're able to possess these children and get the parents to murder the whole family is the doll. Within the doll, that's what they discover in the barn, is that when you open up the back of the head, there's like this silver orb in the back, which is actually like Satan part
and
of
it's like
him.
holding their consciousness. So
Yeah.
like that's why when they discovered the doll in the barn and they release that ball, the Kiernan Shipka character in the mental institution begins to come into lucidity and can remember things, because before she was catatonic because her consciousness was tied to the doll that was buried in the barn.
So did they destroy the orb in the doll?
I think so, or they opened it. And then on the flip side, in this movie, when she sees her mom with the shotgun, she goes out to confront her and her doll is there. That's why I do think it was her doll in that other scene. Maika Monroe's like, Mom, what is that? And the mom says something and then they shoot the doll in the head and the orb shatters.
Okay, but I have a question.
Yeah.
Like, where had this doll been?
It'd been there the whole time.
The mom knew it was there the whole time?
Yeah.
Why'd she wait to unpossess her daughter until that moment? Because everything would come
I mean, that
crumbling
part
down?
I don't really... Well, okay, so basically we forgot to mention that during the interrogation scene, Nicolas Cage...
We haven't even talked about the interrogation scene.
He turns himself in.
Are we possessed? We're forgetting things.
He's being like interrogated and they're like watching a video of this interrogation, Maika Monroe and some of the other agents, and he's like singing happy birthday to Maika Monroe's character Lee like over and over again, and they're like, this went on for 18 minutes, and then she's like,
so she wasn't in the room during this. It's like a VHS tape, and then Blair Underwood, Maika Monroe's boss, sits down. He's like, what do you know? What are you not telling us? And there's in the background, there's a creepy freeze frame of Longlegs.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
he's like interrogating Maika Monroe. And Maika's like, I don't know what you're like.
well, she keeps saying that he must have had an accomplice.
An accomplice.
And she's like, I need to talk to him.
And then Blair Underwood's like, I went through your file and I discovered that someone came to your house and your mom called the police. You need to go talk to your mom. She knows something.
Yes.
It's like, oh,
Yes.
okay.
But for some reason, she also goes down to talk to Longlegs, I think to figure out the accomplice thing. She like is convinced she's going to be able to like break him or get information from him, but does the opposite, where he ends up committing suicide by banging his head against the table over and over again because he says, Hail Satan. And he's like, this is the plan. The plan is for him to kill himself and then the final murder can happen. I don't really get it.
Doesn't make any sense.
That's something I'm missing that I'm not understanding, but that was the idea, that like it was the trifecta was coming to a head.
And that's where there's like a promo shot of like Maika Monroe against the wall, like looking alarmed. There's like, you realize it's like blood splatter on her. It's from that scene.
And then her boss comes in and like screams at her. I'm like, this is not her fault.
It's like, why was she
crazy?
Why was she left alone in this room? Why was he able to bash his head like
Before anyone
25
stopped
times before
him.
anyone stopped?
There was so many,
But so then she goes to visit her mom, and this is the first time we meet the mom in person, and she just like
was that before he died? I don't remember. Oh no, I guess probably
It was after,
because then he was like, you got to go talk to
you
your
gotta
mom.
talk to your mom.
Yes.
Because I don't know why we didn't do research before we even hired you, but you have a file, and turns out someone came into your house.
This is where maybe you did need to do some research on the FBI, because there's so many
You do a
interviews to get to the
background
FBI,
check.
and they go and talk to everyone that knows you.
Which in this small town, anyway, like gossip probably spreads like wildfire. So, but anyway, besides the point, we go visit the mom, and she's just being all odd. You see that she's a hoarder, and I kind of forget what happens in that scene when she first visits her mom.
She sees the basement locked and there's like cockroaches coming out from under it, and that kind of freaks her out. Her mom's a hoarder. She says, everything you need to know is upstairs. I left your room exactly as it is. And then she finds a picture of Longlegs. And they don't even show the picture, but maybe that was before she interrogated him. I don't remember.
And then is there a flashback?
I think you start to see some of the flashbacks, yes.
So you see a Polaroid of Longlegs. You realize that opening scene was Maika Monroe as a little girl, and she had taken a Polaroid picture of Longlegs.
Yes.
And then that's kind of where it's like you hear the mom like being like, who are you? Like, I don't know who you are, blah, blah, blah. And then I don't know if it like fades out.
I can't remember.
Now you're questioning Maika Monroe's memory. You're
Yes.
like, oh, there are things you don't remember or you're intentionally not telling us.
And I will say, like, okay, so back to the idea that this is like really insular. I think like what I end up liking, even though it annoyed me during the movie and I think made it like less dramatically engaging in terms of like the metaphor of like something's been withheld from you, or there are things from your childhood that you've chosen consciously or unconsciously to not look at because they're so disturbing and have so fractured your psyche. There's something about that where like that is an insular experience, right? Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Is there more coffee?
Yeah, here.
Do you want more?
Yeah.
Talk while I'm gone.
No, because I keep trying. I need you to react to this. I cannot.
Hey, it'll be a fitting song to sing. Hell is real.
And I skull back. All right. This movie's very insular.
Yeah.
Which annoyed me. It took me out of the movie while I was watching it. But I think the themes centering around a woman who doesn't remember her own past because her mom hid things from her, and also psychologically maybe she could not handle it, or the devil was possessing her, however you want to interpret that. I think that does make your world really small, right? And like referential, and you just kind of repeat the patterns, you see the patterns, you're trying to hide things from yourself, and the world keeps trying to get you to remember. Like, I feel like that's really insidious and accurate to like what that might be like as just imagining it. So anyway.
That's really insightful, as you always are. But there's just
so
like
kind.
The intention of this movie, but then like my movie going experience
Didn't match it.
Didn't match.
Agreed.
And it's something about like Satan literally being real. I just like can't get past that.
I know. I can't either. And
It's just too much.
all of his movies,
Too much.
or the movies I've seen,
Go for a smaller evil figure, not Satan himself.
it's the same as the other movie he did, The Black Coat's Daughter.
Okay, I never saw that.
I reread the summary. It's basically about these two girls at a boarding school get left behind during Christmas break, kind of like The Holdovers, but scary. And one of them is pregnant and is going to go tell her boyfriend this is happening. She doesn't want it to be the case. And while she's gone, the other girl, like I think somehow gets possessed by the devil and like starts killing people, and then ends up killing the other girl. And like the police find her like prostrating in front of the boiler room, saying "Hail Satan" with heads cut off. And I actually remember I was like scared, but then it cuts to like the future. It's the girl who was possessed. She has taken on the identity of someone else that she's killed. She like runs into the girl's family, but she's posing as Joy, the girl she just killed. Anyway, I don't really know how to explain this, but the point is that what ends up happening is they end up doing an exorcism on her. And then she prays that the devil won't leave her. And then she ends up going back to the school and going back to the boiler room to try and like summon him back again, but it doesn't happen. And I just don't understand. Like, I would never write a story about that. Like, I just have it doesn't resonate for me. I feel like a movie about Catholicism or like some other kind of tradition where I maybe, even though I guess Catholicism is tied to, they're obviously against Satan, but I just feel like I'll buy into it and I'll feel like thematic resonance with the devil. I'm just kind of like, meh, I don't really believe in that.
For me, it's not a question of like, is the devil real or not? It's just like my brain can't grasp it. It's almost like such an overwhelming concept for me that I just kind of shut off is my thing.
I feel that.
And so in this movie, it's a lot.
Well, we'll get into, I think we're going to describe the theme a little bit more detail in a moment. Okay. But before we do, there's one more thing I want to say about Nicolas Cage's characterization or the way he performed. One, he patterned it on his mother. He said the actor patterned Longlegs' hand movements, higher pitched voice, and penchant for saying cuckoo on Cage's own mother, Joy Vogelsang. She did a lot of things to freak him out when Cage was a boy, Perkins reports. He harvested a lot of memory of his mom. What? I want to know more about that. Yeah. So that's just something interesting. And then also apparently his death scene where he slams his head against the table was supposed to be reminiscent of Lon Chaney's mask being taken off in Phantom of the Opera. Lon Chaney played the Phantom of the Opera in the original movie.
Okay.
In the 1930s or whatever, 1920s.
Down once more in the dungeon of my deep
despair.
Yeah, because it's like he looks like he had a lot of plastic surgery. Like intentionally Longlegs has like a plasticky face. But why did he look like that?
Well, I think that kind of goes to, was there a trans metaphor here at play? And is that problematic? Kind of like with Silence of the Lambs, which has gotten more criticism in recent years because Buffalo Bill is trying to create, how would you describe what he's trying to do? Or is she? I don't even know what I should be saying, to be honest.
Maybe they is the appropriate word. Yeah. They're murdering women and taking bits and pieces of them to create a female suit for themselves.
Yeah, so Buffalo Bill...
Like, why do you think that was going to work? I'm sorry, you're going to make a Frankenstein's monster of people's bodies. That's revolting.
It's supposed to scare you and make you laugh, which is not great.
Not great.
And so I found this article. It was in Them, a critical article about Longlegs and trans representation in horror films. And it was really excellent because it shed light both on their feelings on Silence of the Lambs, saying like this was bad when it comes to trans representation, but also this is a freaking good movie and here's why. And then it was also like, and I think that Oz Perkins was very aware of creating a Longlegs character that seemed to be evoking a put on feminine air to kind of speak back to this movie in a way that's smarter than you might think. Because my reaction to that was like, why are they making him look so feminine? Like, is this just like Silence of the Lambs, kind of like using this as a shorthand for evil?
Yeah.
But that's not quite what this person's interpretation was. So I want to read a little bit of what they wrote. So first, the article starts by saying, transgender representation was so scarce in my adolescence that Psycho was one of my first exposures to the concept. To be clear, Norman Bates, played to create perfection by Anthony Perkins, was not written as trans. A psychiatrist explains in a painfully expository monologue at the end of the film, the motel killer was not a transvestite, but rather a lost boy who was simply doing everything possible to keep the illusion of his mother being alive, including impersonating her. And then they go on to say that Silence of the Lambs sent a stigmatizing message that trans feminine expression was somehow inherently villainous. And they say that Silence of the Lambs and Psycho are still one of their favorite movies. As a trans woman, if I excised any visual media, or if I did not look at any visual media that associated queerness with monstrosity, I wouldn't have a lot of horror left. What I'm interpreting her as saying is like, I wouldn't be able to watch horror movies if I was so offended by the fact that they use this queerness as like a shorthand for villainy. I think that's probably pretty true.
Yeah.
So that's kind of point A. And then going on to say that Psycho, we haven't talked about this yet, but Oz Perkins is the son of Anthony Perkins, who was the man in Psycho.
Yes.
What do you know about Anthony Perkins, or do you want me to say what I know?
I know that Anthony Perkins was an actor and a closeted gay man who ended up getting HIV/AIDS later in life and dying from it.
And then to add on to that, Anthony Perkins had a longtime partner, and both he and his partner, and he was married to Barry Berenson was his wife's name. And his partner's name, I think, was like Tab or something.
Tab Hunter?
And so both of them together decided to undergo conversion therapy.
Anthony did?
Yes. They wanted to do it and believed it would work. And they had like specific therapists they were using who seems like a kind of a not great person. But then to add his death from AIDS, the reason that this movie is tied to parents hiding secrets from kids is because Barry, Oz's mom, she did not tell her kids. She tried to keep the secret of Anthony Perkins' true identity from like everybody. She was like, he wasn't gay, like he didn't have AIDS, that never happened. Mm-hmm. So the idea of like a lie being at the heart of your family is his exact experience.
Terrible.
It's terrible. But then to go back to this Samantha Allen, so Samantha's article in Them went on to say in her article, does Oz Perkins believe that his father's queerness and his mother's complicity in concealing it was akin to devil worship? It's clear from his many thoughtful interviews on the film that he does not. Oz knows what it feels like for parents to keep things from you. It can feel evil, like there's some festering darkness hidden behind their closed bedroom door at night. Oz Perkins is a smart, savvy filmmaker who I knew previously from his appearance in the Shudder documentary Queer for Fear, discussing his father's legacy. I'd argue that the son of Anthony Perkins is probably more aware than most of the relationship between horror and queerness. With all that in mind, the satanic panic that defined the era leading up to his father's death serves as a compelling framework for the unspoken truths that eat away at families from the inside. Oz is not saying homosexuality is evil. He's saying well-kept secrets possess an almost otherworldly power.
Is this also from Them?
Yeah. So it's the idea that it's the secret and not the queerness that is the problem. And I really liked that interpretation. It made me like the movie more. Yeah. And it reminds me of my favorite TV show. One of my favorite TV shows.
Gilmore Girls.
The Americans.
No, The Americans.
But yeah, in that show, there's like this really powerful scene where the daughter's trying to find out that her parents are spies. And she's kind of turned to like this external group, the church, which her parents as like communist spies don't like. But she's leaning into this anyway. And I think they end up having to confess to the pastor that they are spies, but they have to try and like convince him not to tell. And then they want Paige to like spy on him to make sure he's not going to tell. She like steals his journal and then she puts the journal entries up in the dark room for them. She took pictures of them and the parents go down to look at it. And the journal entry she's chosen to take a picture of is the pastor writing about how much these parents have fucked up their daughter.
Oh my God.
And so it's like this image of them reading what the secrecy and like the double life has done to the child. And Paige is the one who took the pictures to put that in front of her parents to help them. But it just shows how like insular and circular this whole situation is and how dark a secret can be, like a snake eating its own tail.
Yeah. And
anyway, I love that as a theme. And I really liked Samantha's article. And I highly recommend, if you're interested in thinking about how queerness operates in this movie, checking it out.
It was all right there. You have it in bold. I missed it mentioning the Americans.
I know. I was ready. That is such a good scene. Oh my God.
So should we move on to Osgood Perkins' history and background?
Yeah, we kind of started to talk about it, but go ahead. You could read it.
Perkins funnels his own difficult past into what turns out to be a mystical procedural with a tormented mother-daughter storyline at its center. His father died of AIDS complications in 1992 after a lifetime in the closet, and much speculation about his personal life aired by the likes of Confidential magazine, including an on and off affair again with Tab Hunter. Osgood Perkins' mother, Barry Berenson, was a model and actress who stayed with Anthony until he died, keeping her husband's sexuality and illness a secret from her children. They married in 1973 after Anthony tried conversion therapy. Berenson died on September 11th in the first American Airlines plane that hit the World Trade Center. You know, talk about how this movie itself, like so many coincidences and makes the world feel so small. Crazy that Osgood has parents, one that is like famous actor Anthony Perkins from Psycho, and then the model actor Barry Berenson, who dies in a 9/11 plane crash. Like, it's just horrible. Like so crazy to think of that.
It
That's
also
insane.
Shocks me. Like, when you told me that he was the son of the man in Psycho, I was like, what? To me, that feels, I mean, the movie's in black and white. It feels so long ago. I'm like, that's not possible. It must be, you mean grandfather. Like, it still kind of shocks me that he's his son, even though it mathematically makes sense. Like, it just feels like that's of a different time.
Yeah. But did Psycho come out in 1960? Like, it's crazy to think that the movie came out after Vertigo.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like Hitchcock intentionally made it black and white, even though it was kind of out of fashion, but it kind of like draws you back into more historical movies, which now, like, kind of watching it out of context, you're like, oh, it's just another one of those old black and white movies.
That's really interesting. One fun fact about Psycho, though, I don't know how true this is or where I heard it.
Is it Osgood or Oswood? Type in.
I don't know.
Wait, you type in Oswood throughout this whole thing. I thought it was Osgood. It is Osgood.
Sorry to Oz. I'm gonna call him Oz. That's just like the way my brain is. My brain's like so bad at that kind of stuff. So one of my favorite fun facts about Psycho, I don't know if this is true, but people were shocked.
Wait, what are your favorite fun facts that you don't know is true?
One of the favorite things I heard or read about Psycho, people were shocked by the twist, and it's really not that shocking to a modern audience, but it's because that stuff about like Freud and like the mother son kind of connection, all that like stuff, like, was newer, and so people just didn't, like, I feel like now it's like shorthand, like, oh, mommy problems, or like, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And how back then it was just shocking to even think about those things.
So I understood it was shocking for another reason. So talk about interesting marketing for Longlegs. There was really interesting marketing around Psycho. All the trailers, I'm pretty sure, I mean, if they did trailers back then, or the promotional images all heavily feature Janet Leigh. Mm-hmm. And so you go into this movie being like, okay, this is our main character, Janet. She gets murdered within the first 20 minutes of this movie. Yeah. It's like, now what? So now, again, tying back into Longlegs, I was like, oh, they're going to capture Nicolas Cage at the beginning of this movie. Now what? But it like didn't go that way. Yeah. So it's kind of like expectation trying to intentionally be subversive. Mm-hmm. Like, I just like Longlegs was doing so many interesting things that I just don't think they quite pulled it off every time.
I feel like, sounds kind of mean to say, but like when you're doing something and you're like, this is really deep. And then it like is, but isn't. I kind of got like, all this stuff is really deep and obviously comes from like a very dark, sad personal history. Mm-hmm. But then there's just something about the story plot points being so kind of silly that makes it kind of be like, is it really exploring those things? Or is it kind of like letting them simmer under the surface and then just being like, and here's a funny story that goes on top of it? I don't know.
An interesting thing listening to the Big Picture podcast with Oz Perkins interview on there is he was discussing the making of this movie, and Oz, his dad is Anthony Perkins, like Hollywood royalty in a way, especially horror royalty. Absolutely. Like the son of somebody that prestigious, like, you think it'd be really easy to get a movie to be made. But Oz talks about like the process of making this movie. And I think of all of his past movies where it's like, he kind of was always worried at every moment that this could all come crumbling down. Oz also talked about like every shooting day that it was like really stressful getting everything done. He said that he shot this opening scene where Longlegs gets introduced and the girl like walks out. Like that was a really rushed. They shot it all in one day and it was like super rushed. Oz said, he's telling Sean this, he's like, after that day wrapped, I was like, fuck, we fucked that all up. This movie's fucked. We're in trouble. We're not going to make it. For all the complaints that we have about Longlegs, I think we've talked, you and I both agree that like it was still like a worthwhile movie going experience.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like just to talking about like movies in general, even though we complain, like we still are enjoying
we love it.
We love it. We're passionate about it. Like we're still in awe that this movie gets made, and please continue making movies.
Like Ishana Shyamalan, I'm going to be at your next movie.
Yes, we'll be there.
I'm going to be there. I think like that's such a good point, and it makes me think of sports teams. One thing that drives me, I like the Olympics. I'll watch a sports game, whatever, but I'm not really like a fan of any team. And one thing that drives me insane, I feel like my dad was always listening to WIP, which is the Philadelphia sports station. And every time the Phillies or another Philadelphia team's not doing well, they'll just like complain ad nauseum about them. And the second they start winning again, it's like, yeah, woo, yes, go them. And it just like really annoys me. I'm like, you can't like shit on your teams and then be all happy when they're winning. And I'm like, oh, but it's the same thing I'm doing with movies.
Yeah.
So actually, I take it back. Sorry, WIP.
Yeah. It's funny when you look at it that way, is like looking at movies as like individual representations of like filmmaking in general. Like I feel like we're always rooting for them to succeed. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox and return back to our scheduled structure programming on this Google Doc.
I think maybe just to close out this section on the personal resonance of this movie for Oz Perkins, I'm going to read a quote where he said, "My father was a gay man who was closeted, and in the world that we lived in, it wasn't acceptable. And it still isn't, as insane as that is. My mother made this decision that this wasn't going to be true for our family. I wanted Gretel and Hansel, his previous movie, to be more about that, and I didn't get there with it because it wasn't my script and for 100 other reasons. When I set into Longlegs, that was the core truth. A mother can lie, and she can lie out of love."
A mother can lie and lie out of love.
Yes.
I feel like that's really powerful.
And I think parents do it every day.
Yeah.
For different reasons. And it can be a good thing, and it can also be really dark. It can be to tell children that if you go to sleep, there'll be no scary monsters in the night, even though there could be, or it could be because you are the scary monster and you have to be the scary monster to keep your kids safe. Or it could be because you don't want your children to have to face stigma in a world that isn't as accepting as it should be.
Wow.
A lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. We can keep going.
Too many reasons.
Keep going. I can list more. But I find it very powerful and interesting. And I saw another quote. I honestly think this might have been like a Jack Antonoff quote. But I think he
What? About this movie?
No. About art. I think he one
the
time.
marketing really went all over the place with this.
I think he
Let's now hear from Jack Antonoff.
He one time tweeted something like, "I think an artist is someone who struggles with a single truth or question, and everything that they write about or everything they create is tied to that question, and it fuels their work." And I personally believe that's true. That's always going to be tied back to like something you can't explain and that you have to turn to art to unravel it. Now, I'm sure there are other people who are just able to create and it's not tied to their psychological wounds, but I do kind of think like people that are drawn to art and that make really powerful art often is because of something. So all this to say is I'm excited to see Oz's future work, because I feel like this idea that a mother can lie and she can lie out of love. Like I don't think it's been put to bed with Longlegs. I think it's going to fuel his art in the future, and I'm interested in that as a theme. Yeah, and I like horror movies. Bum 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 bum.
Is that the horror theme trumpet playing? Yes. All right, what's next on this structure?
I mean, the only thing that's really left is we didn't talk about how this was kind of inspired by the satanic panic of the 90s, how there were a bunch of serial killers that maybe had some satanic beliefs, killers like the Chicago Ripper Crew and Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, who actually plays into fellow 2024 horror film Maxine. Interesting. Whoa. While Longlegs isn't directly inspired by any of them, the titular killer seems to share a motivation with them. That was from Screen Rant. And so I do think it's interesting that two movies this summer kind of had that percolating in the background. I hope we're never in a satanic panic moment again, because that sounds awful and I think that, disturbing.
To a degree.
Well, we are in a moral panic moment.
We're in a moral panic, but
at least Satan's left out of the conversation.
I know.
But yeah, we're definitely in a moral.
But no, they just have different words for Satan.
And I feel like,
and usually is minority groups is what they fill in for instead.
Otherwise, I thought we could end with two.
I love it. This is written in all caps, bold. Favorite Maika Monroe movie? Favorite Nicolas Cage movie? Favorite horror movie? Favorite queer-coded horror movie? Let's go for it. Let's dive in.
I forgot who Maika Monroe was. Like I didn't know that she was like a scream queen.
You didn't quite recognize her face.
No. But I guess I would have to say my favorite Maika Monroe movie is probably
Watcher.
Yeah, which is like her in a like living with her partner in a European city, and then there's like a serial killer on the loose, and she starts to believe that he might live across the street, and it's kind of like an open question if he does. And then it did my favorite thing a movie ever does, which it like leads to this place where it seems like the serial killer is going to come out on top, And it enraged me because it just felt so like anti-feminist and to like build this all up and make me watch this like woman die. I was like gonna throw something at the screen, but then it like shifts again.
Surprises you.
And she survives and I was ecstatic. And so I think that might have been my favorite viewing experience. What about you?
I mean, It Follows is the classic. I also was at the Cleveland International Film Festival back in 2017.
Ooh.
And she was in a movie called The Scent of Rain and Lightning. And it was just an okay movie, but she was in it and
I love the title.
watched it because of it. Yeah, it's a great title. It was based on a book.
What was it about?
Cowboys, betrayal.
You got me.
But it was more of a Western. And I think it was produced by Maggie Grace, who,
Who's that?
this is a really time and place, but she was in the franchise with, what's the one where like the daughter gets abducted and I'm like, I will find you and I will hunt you down.
Taken.
She was from that movie. And I think she used the funding from that to produce this
Wait,
movie.
Maggie Grace, is she the woman from Lost?
Yeah.
What? Go Maggie. I love that.
But yeah, It Follows is just a classic and they're making It Follows 2, which is really exciting.
I am kind of excited about
All right,
that.
favorite Nicolas Cage movie?
I'm going to pull up his filmography because I feel like he's been in so many movies. I feel like National Treasure does have like a special place in my heart because
I've never seen it.
you've never seen.
No.
Okay, we're gonna have to add that to the list. I can't believe you've never seen that. It's a fun movie, and my dad loves that movie because he loves American history. So I'm gonna go with that. I feel like my dad's inspiring me in this situation. I feel like I also really love Moonstruck. And I remember my dad was always telling us to watch Moonstruck and I just like never watched it. I remember we had the VHS and I could see the cover with Cher. I remember I finally watched it and I just thought it was so hilarious. Have you seen Moonstruck? The fact that he has no hand and he has that big moment where he's like, I have no hand.
I forgot that detail.
So hilarious to me. You're like, okay.
But that almost feel like that's a different, there's like the young Nicolas Cage who to me is almost like a different person. Like he just like looks and acts so differently than like the Nicolas Cage we came to know in National Treasure onward.
I don't know. The part where he's like lifted his hand up in the air and he's got a stump and he's like screaming his head off, that feels pretty similar to the craziness I've seen from him later.
Like looking at his filmography, there's like a lot of movies that I love that he's in and some that stick out. Raising Arizona is great.
I haven't seen it.
The Family Man is great. Adaptation is great.
I do love Adaptation.
I'll choose The Family Man.
Beautiful. Favorite horror movie?
I'm going to choose The Ring.
I get that because it
was just like
so scarring.
Because it's like I was like 12 or 13 when that movie came out. It was so scarring, so effective, and just really well done.
I would probably pick The Sixth Sense or Signs just because of the personal connection.
Would you categorize Signs as a horror movie though?
Signs is technically a supernatural movie, and I've written about this on our blog, but there's a way to distinguish the difference between a supernatural movie and a horror movie, which is this. In a supernatural movie, it ends with resolution, like the ghost that is haunting you, it's tied to some kind of psychological pain and that gets released and the family or whoever's in trouble kind of comes to a new understanding. So think like The Babadook, The Sixth Sense, where the little boy and his mom are able to connect again, or even something like The Others versus a horror movie where you think you're getting some catharsis, but instead you can never escape horror, you can never outrun it, and it leaves you in the fear. And so you can think of The Ring.
Ugh. The Ring does a great job. Like she thinks she's like solved it by finding oh my God, so
It's
good.
so
The well,
scary.
thinking she's like returning her body or like freeing her, but then it's like, no, there's
She's
no
like,
escaping.
I'm never going to get over what
Also, the
happened
most
to me.
haunting ending of The Ring. It's her son or stepson is like, he asks like, are we going to be okay? And then Naomi Watts grabs a VHS tape and pops it in to make a duplicate of the tape. She's like, we're going to be.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends. Oh, it's so good and haunting.
And like Smile does that too, which I know you don't like as much.
I haven't
but-
seen it.
Oh, I actually liked it.
Smile 2's coming out. Should we watch it before?
I absolutely. So yeah, that's the difference between, and my professor in my MFA program taught me that. I really stand by that.
Oh my God, we did so much. So I tell my experience. We had gone with so many people to this movie that we needed 2 separate cars and Allison was in a different vehicle. So she came back later than me. I came back to the house and we have an app on our phone where we can turn the lights on remotely. And I was like, maybe I'll just turn the lights on before I enter the house. And I like turn the lights on and I come into the house and I'm waiting for Allison and I'm just like creeped out. And then finally Allison comes back and she sits down and then one of our other friends was there too. And we're all just talking about the kind of the movie and like how silly it was. I didn't realize, but Allison was also dog sitting for one of our friends. And I didn't realize that Allison was going to go back that night.
I couldn't leave the puppy alone.
And we were talking just in general. We kind of like got off topic. We were talking about the movie. And then every now and then Allison would jokingly bring up Longlegs. And every time Allison said the word Longlegs, a chill would like run down my spine. I was like trying to laugh it off, but internally I was freaking out. When I see scary movies, I do get really affected by them. all these like weird, horrifying fantasies come about where I'm like, what if like someone's been in the house this whole time? Like while I was in the movie, like what if someone snuck in? And like I was just so like alarmed, like not necessarily like Longlegs himself was here, but also just like maybe I don't know, like maybe like a demonic possession's happening. I just was getting so creeped out. And before the movie, before we went to see the movie, I was in my bathroom and I looked down at my toilet paper roll. The part where you rip the toilet paper, it was like wavy. And I was like, I don't remember having wavy toilet paper. I went to Allison and kind of like jokingly, but like half seriously, I was like, did you by chance like switch out my toilet paper?
Wouldn't that be so creepy if I did that?
And Allison was like, no, you're insane. And this is all before Longlegs, mind you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, just, I don't really know what happened, but whatever. So we see the movie and now we come back and I'm just like on high alert about everything. And Allison leaves to go dog sit. And I'm like alone at the house. And I like go upstairs and I turn off the downstairs light remotely. And then I go to my bedroom, shut the door. And then I turn off the hallway light remotely. I take my laundry basket and block with the door, press the lock on my door. I'm just like so like haunted. And I was like, I should check the toilet paper roll because I have this giant thing of Costco toilet paper. I'm sure it matches with the toilet paper that I have. And so I go into my closet and look at the Costco toilet paper and it's all straight edge toilet paper.
Dun, dun.
And I'm like, how the hell do I have a wavy toilet paper in my bathroom? But I think that I had bought
a little bit of a roll or something.
A roll, forgetting that I had Costco toilet paper and switched it out and don't remember it. But I was spooked.
That's so funny to me.
And then I crawled into my bed and I couldn't even I just had to sit there and eventually fall asleep.
I wasn't scared.
And then I woke up the next day and I had really bad chest pain. But yeah, and then I ended up actually getting really sick. But I was sick most of my trip into Oregon.
Oh my gosh, you didn't say that until right now.
And I also forgot to bring up my sister got engaged.
Yay!
That's crazy. Sorry to memorialize this on a
podcast.
Or immortalize
right after
this
you talked about how you were sick and you were scared. But that was the cure. It was the cure. Yeah, I feel like you do get more scared after we see movies than I do. But when I was watching Yellow Jackets.
Oh,
Did I tell that story before?
I think you have, but tell an abridged version.
Abridged version. I don't know why. The second season of that show just really got into my head. There's just one character who will fall asleep and will do things and doesn't remember it and does really creepy stuff. And for some reason that really disturbs me. Mm-hmm. And so I was going to sleep one night and I suddenly remembered that character and I had oh wait, what if I had a theory about it and then I just couldn't sleep. I was the whole night oh my God, what if that would happen to me? And
the sleepwalking, right? You were going to start sleepwalking.
And then I started to obsessively rewatch the show. In my mind, I was this will make me less scared of it if I just remember it's a show. So
and I've been out of town and Allison just went down this dark abyss of...
I rewatched it. I was
rewatching it.
Okay. And then I went home and my family was watching the show too. And this is the second season. So I was all right, we're going to all watch an episode together. But when I got in, it came out too late that night. So we were we'll watch it tomorrow. But as everyone knows, I don't like to wait. And I was well, I'll just go watch it now and I'll watch it again with my family tomorrow. So I put it on and it was fine. I feel like second season wasn't that great. And then I went to bed and I thought in my dream I was in my bed in LA. And I rolled over to grab my laptop, but I found a body in the bed, which was just my sister sleeping. But in my mind, it was what is this? And I jumped out of bed, still sleeping, screaming, ready for the door. And then my sister was Allison! Allison! Oh, and we're sleeping in the same room because people were visiting and there was not enough space for everybody. So she was yelling at me to wake up. And I woke up oh, I'm sorry. I was asleep. And then we were laughing because it was hilarious and weird. My sister that was so scary. I'm oh my God, that was so crazy. I was wait, my parents didn't hear me scream. Should I be worried about that? What if a serial killer breaks in? And then I was what if I fall asleep and it happens again? I do crazy things. I can't be here. And I went downstairs and I was not able to sleep for the entire night.
And you also had to go to a wedding.
Yeah, and I was in a wedding the next day. And I was so scared. But then the wedding was really fun and I was fine and I was able to go back to sleep. So I don't think I did tell a story, to be honest.
Maybe not.
So when I get scared, I get really freaking scared.
Yeah. Quickly, we have to run off to a friend's right now. We're having pizza over there.
A super exciting life.
We're watching a movie. Mm-hmm. She is getting a drink that Dax
Shepard
made.
So he made it. Okay, it's a non-alcoholic beer.
I don't really know. But we're watching a movie there, 8 Mile, that we might talk about in the podcast later on. Anything else going on in your life?
God, I might regret saying this, but I'm going to be training for the Philadelphia Marathon.
You already paid for it.
Yeah. That's what I always forget when you train in the summer. It's
because it's in November.
Yeah, so that'll be a great time to run. But up until then, it'll be quite challenging for me.
Whoa.
I just read about how you really should not say your goals out loud.
Yeah. If you say your goal before you've actually done it, that you get the endorphin rush from it, and then it kind of makes you less motivated. But you were going to do this marathon.
Yes, I am. But I feel like I did say that I was going to do it before, and I did it for marathon. So
yeah.
Unclear.
Any last words on Longlegs?
Great title.
Great title. Spooky title. Mood, atmosphere, tone, excellent.
A+.
Plot, questionable.
A strong setup and mood draw you into Longlegs, even if it can't quite live up to its potential.
A movie about possession that didn't quite possess my attention. But we still love movies.
We love movies. We treat it like baseball.
Yeah.
Take me out to the ball game.
Queer Cinema Catchup is a podcast where we talk about film, TV, and miscellaneous topics through a queer lens. I'm Joe.
And I'm Allison.
Thank you so much for listening.
I'm really hungry.
All right.
All right, we got to go eat.
Cuckoo. Cuckoo.